Every summer, we drag hoses across the yard, set timers, and watch plants wilt between waterings. Yet 2,000 years ago in ancient China, farmers filled a buried vessel once every 7 days and walked away. Their crops thrived through drought, while neighboring fields turned to dust. This was not folklore. It was documented in the world's first agricultural science textbook, the Fan Shengqi Shu. The method spread from Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean, from the Hohokam people in Arizona's harshest deserts to Persian engineers adapting it for arid climates. Then, modern irrigation arrived, and we forgot the most efficient watering system ever created. I'm going to show you how it works, why it disappeared, and how to build one in your backyard this weekend using nothing but a wine bottle and unglazed clay. The technique is called Olla irrigation. An Olla is simply an unglazed clay pot buried in the soil with only the neck exposed. Fill it with water and physics takes over. The porous clay walls allow moisture to seep through microscopic pores into the surrounding earth. Here's where it gets interesting. The system operates on moisture tension, the natural force that makes water levels want to equalize. When the soil around the pot dries out, suction pulls water through the clay walls faster. After a heavy rain, when the ground is saturated, the water stays inside the pot until it is needed again. Zero electricity, zero programming, zero microchips. It adapts to weather, crop size, and time of day, using nothing but atmospheric pressure and the laws of nature. The efficiency numbers are staggering. A 2013 study in Kenya compared Olla irrigation to traditional furrow watering. The Olla system saved 97.1% of applied water for maize and 97.8% for tomatoes. Not a typo. Over 97% water savings. Research across multiple continents confirms Olla's reduce water waste by 50 to 70% compared to conventional methods. In one test garden, a 600 square foot plot used 47,000 gallons per season with sprinklers. The same plot with Olla's used 800 gallons. That is 61% less water than drip lines and 80% less than hand watering. Bill Mollison, the father of permaculture, called it the most efficient irrigation system in the world. But efficiency is only half the story. The real magic happens underground. Because the pot is buried, evaporation drops to nearly zero. Surface watering loses 30 to 50% of applied water to evaporation before it even reaches the roots. The buried Olla delivers moisture directly to the root zone with almost no loss. Plants do not undergo stress cycles from wet-dry swings. They receive steady hydration exactly when they need it. Tomatoes develop fewer problems like blossom and rot. Cucumbers stay sweet instead of turning bitter in hot weather. Pumpkins and squash swell without splitting their skins. At the end of the season, dig up an Olla, and you will find something remarkable. A dense mat of roots wraps around the pot like a glove. The plants did not just survive, they thrived by tapping into a water source that never failed them. The science behind this root response reveals why the system works so well. Olla irrigation promotes deep watering and dense root growth. Shallow watering from sprinklers trains roots to stay near the surface, making plants vulnerable to heat and drought. The buried pot forces roots to search deeper, building a more robust system that facilitates efficient nutrient and water uptake. One study in India grew melons using Olla irrigation and achieved 25 tons per hectare with only 2 centimeters of applied water. The same crop, grown with flood irrigation, needed 26 centimeters of water to produce 33 tons per hectare, 13 times more water for only 32% more yield. The math does not lie. Archaeological evidence shows these systems existed across continents for millennia. Mesopotamian farmers buried clay pots in fields where every drop of water meant survival. The Hohokam people in pre-Columbian Arizona developed sophisticated buried pot networks in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. In ancient Rome, the vessels were called aula or aula. The Greeks called them chytra. By the time the technique reached the Mediterranean, Persian engineers had refined it for extreme arid climates. The method survived because it worked. Rural communities in India, Iran, Brazil, and Burkina Faso still use Olla irrigation today. But in the industrialized world, we replaced it with systems that require electricity, plastic, and constant maintenance. The modern irrigation industry generates billions annually. Drip lines clog, timers fail, sprinklers waste water on pavement. These systems create dependence. You buy components, pay for repairs, and consume energy to keep them running. The Olla requires none of this. Make it once, bury it, and it works for years. That is not a product. That is a solution. And solutions do not build industries. So why did we abandon a method that outperforms every modern alternative? The answer is not complicated. Mechanized agriculture demanded uniformity. Tractors needed flat fields. Irrigation systems needed centralized control. The buried pot did not scale to industrial farming. It worked best in gardens, in small plots, in places where people tended the soil themselves. As farming became big business, the knowledge faded. What remained in textbooks was treated as historical curiosity, not practical wisdom. Extension offices stopped teaching it. Seed catalogs stopped mentioning it. Within a generation, a technique used successfully for 4,000 years became obscure. But the physics did not change. The clay still breathes. The soil still creates suction. And you can rebuild this system in an afternoon. The simplest version costs less than $10. The materials are sitting in your garage or available at any garden center. What disappeared was not the method. It was the memory. Now you're about to get that memory back, starting with exactly how to build one and which plants respond best to this ancient approach. Building your first Olla takes about 20 minutes. Start with standard unglazed terracotta pots from any garden center. Size matters. A 1-quart pot irrigates plants in a 1-foot diameter. A 3-quart pot reaches plants in a 1.5-foot radius. The largest pots, 7-quart pots, serve a 2-foot radius. Calculate your garden layout and choose accordingly. Avoid glazed ceramics entirely. The glaze seals the pores and destroys the system's fundamental mechanism. You need clay that breathes. Run your finger across the surface. If it feels smooth and shiny, put it back. If it feels slightly rough and porous, that is what you want. The drainage hole at the bottom needs sealing. A wine cork pressed firmly into the opening works perfectly. Food-grade silicone is another option. Either way, create a watertight floor while preserving the porous walls. Test it by filling the pot with water. If you see drips from the bottom, the seal failed. Fix it before burial. Dig a hole deep enough so that only 1 to 2 inches of the pot rim remains above soil level. This prevents dirt and mulch from contaminating the water inside. The depth also matters for another reason. Exposed terracotta can crack in hard freezes. Keeping most of the pot underground provides insulation. Place the sealed pot in the hole. Fill around it with soil, packing gently to eliminate air pockets. Air gaps create dry zones where roots cannot access moisture. Press the soil firmly against the pot's exterior surface. This ensures direct contact for the moisture tension that drives the entire system. Now fill the pot with water and cover it. A terracotta saucer works well. So does a flat stone or a piece of slate. The cover serves 2 purposes. It prevents mosquitoes from breeding in standing water, and it reduces evaporation from the top opening. Some gardeners use lids from mason jars. Anything that blocks the opening without sealing it airtight works. Here's where placement strategy separates mediocre results from exceptional ones. Space pots 2 to 3 feet apart for maximum coverage. Larger pots holding 2 gallons or more can stretch to 3 or 4 feet between placements. For a 100 square foot garden plot, Ecology Action found that 5 5-gallon Ollas provided complete irrigation. Their test plot used 1.25 gallons per Olla every 4 days. Plant selection determines success. Crops with fibrous root systems respond best. Tomatoes top the list. The steady water supply prevents blossom and rot, a calcium uptake problem caused by inconsistent watering. Cucumbers grown with Ollas develop sweeter flavor because they never experience the stress that triggers bitterness. Melons and squash thrive. Pumpkins grow large without splitting their skins, a common problem when water delivery fluctuates. Beyond the obvious candidates, beans and carrots adapt well. Even shallow-rooted crops like lettuce and herbs benefit, though they require closer Olla placement. The roots do not need to reach far. They just need consistent access. Position plants in a circle around each pot. The irrigation radius extends evenly in all directions. Imagine the pot as a hub, with plants as spokes. This arrangement maximizes the number of crops each Olla serves, while ensuring every plant receives adequate moisture. Refilling frequency depends on temperature, plant size, and crop type. Most gardeners refill every couple of days during peak summer heat. In cooler weather, or with smaller plants, once weekly suffices. The water level inside the pot tells you everything. Check it regularly at first until you establish a rhythm. After a few weeks, you will know your garden's consumption pattern. The modern bottle adaptation offers an above-ground alternative. Rinse an empty wine bottle thoroughly, then fill it with water. Fit the neck into a terracotta spike made for this purpose. The spikes sit in the soil, with the bottle inverted above ground. The terracotta spike provides a porous surface, while the glass bottle acts as a visible reservoir. The bottle releases water gradually into the ground, covering a radius of nearly 20 inches. This variation suits container gardens and raised beds where buried pots prove impractical. The visual aspect helps too. You can see exactly when refilling is needed without checking underground moisture levels. Some gardeners connect 2 terracotta pots together to create taller vessels. Seal the drainage hole on both pots and use silicone to bond the rims together, creating a double-height Olla. This increases capacity without expanding the footprint. The taller design works well in deep raised beds or in areas with aggressive root systems that benefit from vertical water distribution. Test your system before committing to a full garden installation. Build one Olla. Plant tomatoes or squash around it. Monitor plant health and water consumption through a complete growing season. This trial run reveals how often you will need to refill, which pot sizes work best for your climate, and whether your soil type requires spacing adjustments. Clay composition varies by manufacturer. Some terracotta releases water faster than others. Your test Olla shows the real-world performance in your specific conditions. Adjust your plans based on actual data, not assumptions. Stable soil moisture, maintained by Olla Irrigation, enables growing crops in conditions that defeat conventional methods. Research in India achieved high tomato yields using saline irrigation water that would kill plants under standard watering. The slow, steady release prevents the salt accumulation that occurs with flood or sprinkler irrigation. Plants watered this way avoid stress cycles entirely. They do not experience the wet-dry oscillation that weakens root systems and reduces yields. Growth stays consistent, and production extends longer into the season. The difference shows up in both quantity and quality of harvest. Your materials are waiting. The pots sit on shelves at the garden center. The knowledge just transferred from ancient farmers to you. What happens next depends entirely on whether you act or file this away as interesting information. One choice puts water in the ground, and the other keeps you dragging hoses. A 600 square foot garden running on sprinklers burns through 47,000 gallons in a season. That same space with Ollas uses 800 gallons. The difference is not marginal. It is transformative. Your water bill drops by thousands of gallons, while your plants thrive in ways surface watering never achieved. Compare that to drip irrigation, the system marketed as peak efficiency. Ollas use 61% less water than drip lines. Compared to hand watering, the gap widens to 80%. These are not theoretical projections. They are measured outcomes from gardens running both systems side by side. The 2013 Kenya study put hard numbers to what farmers already knew. Olla irrigation saved 97.1% of applied water for maize. For tomatoes, 97.8%. Furrow irrigation, the baseline comparison, wasted nearly everything. The water either evaporated or ran off before roots could absorb it. The buried pots eliminated both losses. Why does this matter beyond your water bill? Because drought is not theoretical anymore. Western states face permanent water restrictions. Aquifers drop every year. Meanwhile, your tomatoes still need moisture. The choice between a productive garden and water conservation should not exist. Ollas eliminate the conflict entirely. The root response reveals the hidden benefit. At season's end, dig up an Olla. The clay surface will be wrapped in a dense mat of roots. They cluster around the pot like veins around an artery. This is not random growth. The plant invested energy building infrastructure because the water source proved reliable. Surface watering creates shallow, weak root systems. Plants learn that moisture comes from above, so roots spread horizontally near the surface. When heat waves hit, or you miss a watering, those shallow roots have no backup. The plant wilts, and production stops. Olla-watered plants push roots deep and wide. They build resilient networks that access moisture from multiple depths. When surface soil dries out, deeper roots keep functioning. The plant does not stress. Growth continues uninterrupted. This stability prevents the quality problems that plague surface-watered crops. Tomatoes develop blossom end rot, when water delivery fluctuates. The calcium cannot move through the plant properly during dry periods. Consistent moisture from ollas eliminates the problem. Your tomatoes grow evenly from flower to harvest. Cucumbers turn bitter in hot weather when water stress triggers defensive compounds. The plant thinks it is under attack and floods the fruit with cucurbitacins. Steady Olla irrigation prevents the stress response. Your cucumbers stay sweet, even through July heat. Squash and pumpkins split their skins when erratic watering causes growth surges. The fruit expands too quickly for the skin to accommodate. Olla-fed plants grow at a measured, consistent pace. The skins develop properly. Your harvest looks market-ready instead of cracked and rotting. The Hohokam people survived in Arizona's Sonoran Desert using buried pot networks. One of Earth's harshest environments supported agriculture because water reached roots without evaporating in 115-degree air. Modern Arizona gardeners rediscovering ollas report the same results. Their desert gardens produce abundantly, while neighbors struggle with scorched soil and dead plants. Bill Mollison, who developed permaculture into a global movement, called ollas the most efficient irrigation system in the world. Not efficient for ancient farmers. Efficient? Period. No modern technology surpasses the physics of soil moisture, tension, and porous clay. The system operates on 0 volts and 0 microchips. No timers to program, no filters to clean, no emitters to unclog, no pressure regulators or backflow preventers. The olla sits in the ground. Soil tension pulls water through clay walls, and plants drink. That is the entire mechanism. Animals do not damage buried pots the way they chew through drip lines. Insects do not colonize clay the way they clog drip emitters. The simplicity eliminates failure points, and your irrigation system becomes nearly indestructible. Rural communities across India, Iran, Brazil, and Burkina Faso still use ollas as their primary irrigation method. Not because they lack access to modern systems, because ollas work better. When your family's food security depends on every drop of water, you use the method that wastes nothing. The knowledge survived 4,000 years because it solved a fundamental problem. How do you deliver water to roots without losing it to evaporation, runoff, or deep percolation? Every conventional method fails on at least one count. Ollas succeed on all 3. That success is why the technique appears in the Fan Shengqi Shu, the world's first agricultural science textbook, written over 2,000 years ago in China. The ancient authors documented what worked. Buried vessels releasing water through porous walls worked then. Physics has not changed. The modern revival is not nostalgia. It is recognition that older does not mean obsolete, especially when the old method outperforms every replacement we invented. Drip irrigation requires infrastructure, electricity, and maintenance. Ollas require clay and water. Agriculture specialists across New Mexico and the American West now teach olla installation in extension programs. The technique is not fringe anymore. It is mainstream drought adaptation. As water becomes scarce, methods that waste nothing become essential. Your garden represents a choice. Continue the cycle of dependence on infrastructure that fails during droughts, requires constant maintenance, and wastes resources. Or adopt a system that has functioned across 6 continents for 4 millennia. The clay pots are at the garden center. The wine bottles are in your recycling bin. The soil is waiting. You now understand the physics, the history, the economics, and the installation process. Every piece of knowledge necessary to end your irrigation struggles has just transferred from ancient China to your hands. What separates information from transformation is action. The pots work, whether you believe in them or not. Soil moisture, tension does not require faith. It requires porous clay and thirsty roots. Everything else happens automatically. The drought is not coming. It is here. Your water bill proves it. Your wilted plants confirm it. The solution is not complicated technology or expensive systems. It is buried terracotta, doing what it has done since Mesopotamian farmers first pressed clay into jars. The ground remembers. Now you do too. The hose is still coiled in your garage. The sprinkler timer is still programmed to waste water on concrete. And the terracotta pots are still sitting on shelves at the garden center, waiting for someone to remember what they actually do. You just watched 2,000 years of agricultural knowledge compress into a few minutes. Not theory, not speculation. Documented results from Kenya to Arizona, from ancient Mesopotamia to modern permaculture farms. Water savings above 97%. Root systems that thrive through drought. Harvests that continue when neighboring gardens fail. The technique survived 4 millennia because it works better than everything we replaced it with. The physics has not changed. Soil moisture tension still pulls water through porous clay. Plants still respond to consistent hydration. And your water bill still climbs every summer you ignore this. Next weekend, you will either bury a pot or drag a hose. One choice costs $10 and works for decades. The other costs thousands of gallons and never stops demanding your time. The ancient farmers made their choice. The clay is waiting for yours.